Alright, so this is the pouch that I made some years ago. It's made of buckskin, and I just kind of dreamt up the pattern. I didn't really follow anything necessarily. Just something that just kind of popped out of my head. It's got a cattail stalk button here that I punched 2 holes in, and then in the back I just put a bead and a couple of overhand knots so that it doesn't pull through. And that would be the same for the tassels, and they're just decorative, really. There's a bead here, it's a plastic bead. It could be a wooden bead or a shell bead or whatever. And an overhand knot there, and the same with this one. Okay. And since we're on the inside here, the loop for the main button, the closing button, is really just some reverse twisted buckskin cordage, and I just made a double overhand knot and just pulled it through. So really simple, nothing too extravagant or elaborate. And again, this is a cattail stalk that's got 2 holes cut through it, and these are the tassels, and the tassels have the deer hair attached to it. I probably would have used something like a rabbit fur next time, you know, in retrospect, because what happens is the deer hair has lost some luster. You can kind of tell it's dead hair. Deer hair is actually hollow, it's brittle. So fur-bearing hair probably worked better for this sort of tassel. And you can see I'll probably do a separate video on how to make the tassels if you're interested. And I just decorated it with some plastic beads. So that's really all it is. And then I'm just using some buckskin cordage, and I'm just reinforcing the edges by doing whip stitch all the way around. And this is just a basic whip stitch. And then even for the side and the attaching the side and the front and the back, it's just a whip stitch. So it's really kind of simple. And I did it with buckskin as opposed to like sinew or artificial sinew or thread. Either way you could have done it. I did it on the outside for a rustic look instead of doing it doing it and then stitching it and then turning the bag right side out so that you can't see the seam. That's another way to do it. There's lots of ways you could do this, but just something real quick and dirty. And really something that would work in a primitive situation. So, you know, I could use an awl to poke these holes here and then just cut strips, or use strips of even plant cordage or fibers as my stitching material. So this is kind of how it's constructed. Now I'm out of buckskin. Right now I've got some remnants left, and I haven't, you know, I live in an apartment building, and it's kind of a strict apartment building, so I won't be able to set up a rack or anything and tan a couple of hides, green hides that I do have anytime soon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate this bag out of just regular store-bought leather, and you can kind of see that I have some here. And I went on ahead and tore up a paper bag and created a pattern from the original bag. So it's more or less an approximation. It'll work as a pattern. And the way this works is really simple design. So this whole piece is one piece. That's the back part. So that's the back. Okay? If you can see that. Like so. Okay? And then to get the front here, all I have to do is fold it down, and that'll give me my front. Okay, and then I've also marked the holes here. These 2 tassel holes here and here are optional. You don't have to. That's just for decoration. And then in the top flap hole here, again, depending on how you want to fasten this, this could be optional as well. I might put snaps in this because it's commercial leather, but you could, again, you could take this as inspiration, actually I may not use some snaps. I'll take that back. I have a deer antler, and that I went on ahead and drilled some holes into as a button. So this is probably what we're going to use for this project as a button. And I guess to do this Primitively, you'd have to burn a hole, or you just have to take the time and use a pump drill or a hand drill with a stone tip and just drill your holes all the way through. That would be the same for a shell, as opposed to horn or antler or even bone. So this is what we're going to use as a button. All right, so we have the pattern for the front and the back. Just fold it down for the front, lift it up for the back, and then this is the side, this part. So this is the side, and I measured this to be approximately an inch and a half wide by 14 inches long. All right, and I'm making an addition as well, so I kind of measured this down. This is about inch and a half, maybe 2 inches long. And this part here will comprise 2 belt loops, so that the bag can then be attached to a belt, and we'll just probably stitch or rivet those in on the back side. So I went on ahead and grabbed a crayon or a marker or some charcoal, and I have my leather pieces, and I went on ahead and traced the front, the belt loops, and then the strip out here using a crayon. I'm not sure if this is showing up on the camera, but I will go ahead and cut the pieces out, and you will be able to see the individual pieces. It's only 3 pieces, or actually it's the 5 pieces altogether, but technically it's just 3. And then here is the full back part. Okay, and then I've made sure and marked where my holes are going to be. So this is what I like to do when I'm making patterns and stuff like that, when I'm reconstructing or deconstructing, reverse engineering things, is I like to use paper bags as my pattern material, because they're actually, this is quite durable, especially when you're working with heavier materials like buckskin or leather, and then also for storage. So I can store this pattern away now and come back to it if I need to make another bag. And unlike tissue paper, which is more of a traditional material to make a pattern out of, like for Simplicity or Joanne or something like that, the tissue paper tends to want to rip on you, and it easily deteriorates so over time. So I like to use a paper bag. You can even take some of those commercial patterns and redo them on large newsprint or large paper bag to save for later. So I like to do that, and then I just have some really light fabric weight leather for the bag here. This could be done out of like 6 or 8 ounce leather for a really durable pouch or bag. Whatever the material you use is up to you. My whole thing is I try to show these things conceptually. That's why I give a lot of details in my videos. They're really for me to archive when I forget and I want to recreate something. So I've gotten some feedback on my videos are kind of long, and I'm like, that's okay, because they're really for me. If you get something out of it, then I'm glad for that. But if I'm going to explain this to myself or somebody else, I want to explain and get across the concept. So it doesn't matter what material you use, what situation you're in, you'll be able to create whatever it is that I'm presenting, and not have to have the exact same things to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these pieces out, and then we will start constructing this possibles pouch. Okay. All right. So I have a pair of leather shears here that cut really good for leather. Just makes things easier. Again, you could use a stone tool, you could use a really sharp blade, razor blade, piece of glass. Your cuts would be a little rougher with a piece of glass or a stone tool, but you're looking for more functionality versus form in a primitive situation. So anyways, this makes things elegant and easier, so I'm using these here. And what we have here is we have the back part, we have the front part, okay, and then we have the side like so, and then we have our 2 belt loops. like this. All right, and those will be going on the back here and here. So we're pretty much all set to start stitching stuff together, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a hole punch, and I'm going to punch the necessary holes in, so that we can for the tassels at least. So we're going to use a button. I'm going to use this deer antler for a button, and so we don't have to punch the holes for there, but this would be the time to punch the holes. I am going to probably put some tassels on the front, so I've got a hole marking here and a hole marking there. Because we're using the deer bone as a button, I'm going to just basically make a kind of a traditional slit, or buttonhole. I don't really have to do anything special with leather, because leather you don't really need to serge the edges like you would have to do a button. So I just got to make sure that it's the right size so that the button can fit through it. So that's how I'm going to modify it differently from the original. I could do the same thing with the loop here, but I think it'd probably be a little bit more secure to just go ahead and make a slit and close it up like that.